Hey, my handsome ladies and gentlemen, this is Shmeaty. Welcome back to the channel, or welcome if you're new. Two of the best Pokemon you are not running in the 2025 Championship Series Cup are going to be Glalie as well as Togekiss. Now on paper, these Pokemon are not a part of the largely accepted Big Four of the Championship Series Cup, being Turtonator, Dewgong, Oranguru, and Gyarados. However, these Pokemon have very interesting matchups and play into those Pokemon, as well as a lot of what you'll largely be seeing in the meta. I paired them up together. After recently seeing my friend ELMOisINNOCENT hit Legend with Glalie, I was inspired, so we are going to be running it today. And in game number 1, not the best lead ever, it's going to be Glalie leading into an Incinerate Turtonator. Incinerate Turtonator is absolutely a fraud and will let anybody down when given the chance. Nevertheless, we're going to go for an Avalanche onto the Turtonator. We are now at the back-to-back moves, and I believe they undertapped. So I am going to go for the Avalanche. Turtonator takes a massive amount of damage, and I'm very comfortable with going for the no shield on the Glalie. Glalie's job is done, and now I can look to get farm on my Togekiss. Of course, I'm never going to Ember down from there, so we bring in the Togekiss. The Incinerate being locked in that animation means we get a 3-peck running head start, and now they try to catch onto Oranguru, but we have the perfect answer to Oranguru in the back. Even a little bit down on energy, Turtonator, especially when it's running Ember, please run Ember on your Turtonator. When Turtonator is running Ember, has a phenomenal matchup into Oranguru, as its bulk allows it to withstand Brutal Swing after Brutal Swing and not be particularly susceptible to the Confusion Fast Move pressure. They're going for another Brutal Swing, and now we are at one of our own. 3 more Embers and a Brutal Swing of our own will dispatch this Oranguru if they do not decide to shield, and they do decide to shield, realizing that if they're going to win this game, it's going to be on the back of that Dewgong. In comes the Togekiss. Togekiss going to be able to land 1 Aura Sphere guaranteed here, and I'm going to go for 1 further peck and an Aura Sphere. However, my opponent undertaps their move, going for the Icy Wind. However, that does not save them. 2 Aura Spheres are still going to be enough to KO, so Aura Sphere number 1 is going to land onto the Dewgong despite being debuffed. Aura Sphere number 2 is also going to land onto the Dewgong. GG's to this trainer. Moving swiftly forward onto game number 2 presents Glalie leading into an Oranguru. Oranguru, honestly, is not the worst matchup for me here. I don't mind being the Glalie at all. Being the Glalie here, I usually decide to farm up more than I did, but I decide to switch into my Turtonator, and I am unfortunately punished as we're met with a Shadow Gyarados. Shadow Gyarados is likely going to be able to fully Dragon Breath through my poor Turtonator, and I'm going to be able to land a Brutal Swing onto this Gyarados, which is sufficient enough chip where if my Togekiss gets brought in, I'm going to be in a pretty decent spot to go for the farm down. Unfortunately, speaking of going for the farm down, that Gyarados just got a full farm down of our Turtonator. I decided to instead bring in the Glalie, as I know that they have an Oranguru lurking in the back. Togekiss's main claim to fame in this cup is going to be the fact that it resists all of the energy from Oranguru, which is a pretty rare sighting. They're going to go for a crunch onto the Glalie. I am going to overfarm as much as I can, and they decide to stay in with their Gyarados, which ends up getting them avalanched. Staying in that long when you don't have any shields is definitely a play of all time. They are going to bring in the Oranguru. Oranguru is going to fire off a move at the Togekiss, but Togekiss not phased. No shielding the Trailblaze. The Trailblaze does do more damage as well as boost up the confusion damage, but that's not a particular problem for the Togekiss, especially not at full health, and with the amount of energy we're going to be able to get here, we are going to see them switch into a Glalie of their own. This could be a little bit scary. Aura Sphere onto the Glalie. It's a Shadow Glalie, the rollout KO'd, but now we can go for the rollout farm down with our own Glalie. This was the perfect Pokemon for them to have in the back as we leave with an Avalanche loaded. An Avalanche onto that Oranguru will easily pick up the knockout. GG's to this trainer. Getting into the next game, Glalie leading into a Runerigus. Runerigus is going to have the opportunity to throw on 7, so I'm not going to give them that opportunity. I'm going to instead bring in my Turtonator. I decided to build up to 5 in case they attempted to catch a Brutal Swing on 4, which they did not. They're going to stay in instead. I can still throw the Brutal Swing before they're able to make a Rock Tomb, and then throwing a Brutal Swing to try to deny my turn back would be a pretty useless waste of their energy, so they don't decide to do so. They are going to now bring in a Medicham. Medicham, a very interesting Pokemon, also picking up a lot of steam in the LAIC Championship Series Cup, I guess they're calling it. We're okay with no shielding a potential Dynamic Punch here. Dynamic Punch still going to do a lot of damage, but now we can bring in the Togetic. And Togetic is going to be able to, I guess I can either shield or no shield an Ice Punch here. An Ice Punch is going to do more than 50%, but the peck damage, look at the Medicham getting absolutely shredded. This is a CMP tie to their next Ice Punch. I am going to go for the Aura Sphere. It should be enough to knock out Medicham, a very bulky Pokemon, but not quite bulky enough to survive that. I am going to go for good timing, Aura Sphere onto the Glalie. This will do a sizable amount of damage. My opponent still has 2 shields, and they are going to commit 1 there. I try to get to another Aura Sphere with my Togekiss, unable to switch out. Unfortunately, we are going to get farmed down. Glalie with an energy head start is a pretty scary Pokemon. I should be aware of that fact. I'm going to bring in my own Glalie. I'm going to no shield here. Is it going to be an Avalanche? No, it's a Shadow Ball that hits for pretty big damage onto my own Glalie. And now I'm going to be able to bring in my Turtonator. They bring back in the Runeriga, simultaneous switch, but this isn't particularly bad for me. The Brutal Swing is going to nearly KO as we then proceed to get the Ember Farm down, but it's a simultaneous KO. I need to build up to the back-to-back moves with my Glalie, and now I am going to shield up whatever they throw. I have to go for an Avalanche bait into a Shadow Ball. Basically, an Avalanche has to be shielded or a Shadow Ball has to be no shielded for me to win this game. I go for the Avalanche, it gets shielded, we win the CMP tie because I have the worst Glalie ever built, but that doesn't matter because Glalie will win CMP. Shadow Ball KOs there, Glalie. GG's. Get into the next game. A fellow man of culture is my opponent, leading Glalie into Glalie. I am going to build up to the Shadow Ball. My opponent does not build up to the Shadow Ball, and we are running the same Pokemon, so I know that this cannot be a Shadow Ball. We no-shield, it's an Avalanche, and I'm comfortable with no-shielding the Avalanche there because despite the fact that it does do quite a bit of damage onto the Glalie, it does not leave Glalie susceptible to a potential farm down from another Pokemon, so I'm very comfortable with no-shielding, and then going for a shield and farm down up against their Glalie. If they decide against that and switch out, I can go for an Avalanche on whatever they decide to bring in. They bring in the Turtonator, and Turtonator is going to have a pretty difficult time here. I am going to go for a further rollout here, bringing in the Togekiss, and one of these days I am going to regret bringing in my Togekiss because I swear one of these Turtonators is going to run Flash Cannon or Overheat and absolutely boom my Togekiss. But until that time, I am not going to learn my lesson. I am going to bring in my Togekiss as its Fairy typing allows it to fully wall off the moveset of the Turtonator. My opponent's Switch Clock should be coming up now, and I am going to go for an Ancient Power. It is going to be an Ancient Power landing onto their low health Glalie. Unfortunately, this is going to be enough to KO even with the undercharge, but we get the Omni Boost. In comes a Dugong. We are going to be able to land one Icy Wind here, or excuse me, not an Icy Wind, an Aura Sphere. Icy Wind is the move on the Dugong. Unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to make that move, so I am going to have to switch out into the Glalie, getting whatever usage I can out of this Glalie. The Ice type resist is coming in very clutch here, and we are going to unfortunately get farmed down. This Dugong has quite a bit of energy, but I should be able to bring in the Turtonator and make some magic happen. I have to pretty much get the shield call correct here. I have no other choice. I go for a no shield. It's an Icy Wind. The Icy Wind does not do a lot of damage, and now we're going to look to build up as much as we can with our Turtonator. I think this could be a good spot to shield, so I decide to shield up, and I get the call correct a second time. It's going to be a Drill Run. The Drill Run is going to be shielded. Now we're going for a Dragon Claw. I need this Dragon Claw to KO the Dugong from this range, and it does KO, even at -1. In comes their Turtonator, but at -1, they're not going to be able to outpace, and this Dragon Claw is still going to be enough to KO their Turtonator. GG's. Get into the next game. Glalie leads into a Gyarados. One of the best leads that Glalie can hope to see. Because they're running the Shadow Gyarados, the rollouts will do substantial damage. They say switch into an Oranguru, but because of the fact that it's going to be 13 turns to their first move, I can throw 4 rollouts and get the Avalanche off basically for free. And now this Oranguru is most certainly going to be in Brutal Swing range and not going to be able to do a lot of damage onto our Turtonator. I'm going to be very careful to make sure that I throw a move before they're able to switch back into that Gyarados. I do want to have some residual energy going into that matchup though, because being able to force a shield off of that Gyarados would be pretty nice for me. I'm going to go for the Brutal Swing here. If my opponent decides to shield up, it's going to end up being in my favor. They decide to no shield, and that's perfectly fine by me, because I'm going to go for the double Brutal Swing here. I am pretty low on this Turtonator, so I don't know if I'm going to be able to get this Brutal Swing off, and we are going for it. Another Brutal Swing landing onto the Gyarados here. They did switch out immediately, so they don't have any residual energy. I think from this point, I can just bring in the Togekiss or the Glalie. I'm going to elect to bring in the Glalie, because like I said earlier in the match, I can tank this Aqua Tail, and the rollouts are going to do a substantial amount of fast move pressure because Shadow Gyarados is banned in this cup for a reason, but it takes quite a bit of damage. They're going to bring in the Bronzong. We're going to go for the Shadow Ball. Shadow Ball into the Bronzong will do a substantial amount of damage, so they are forced to shield it up. You might think I'm crazy, but I'm bringing in Togekiss. Togekiss is going to have to shield up everything from the Bronzong, but that's not the point. I'm going to go for an Aura Sphere here after keeping energy and making sure that I have enough energy to be able to land a move onto the Gyarados as well. So I build up to the double Aura Sphere, and now I'll throw an Aura Sphere, and I have to be very careful because my opponent is able to switch out and catch onto their Gyarados. I might be in a pretty bad spot. I'm going to go for the Aura Sphere. They are going to throw one Metal Sound, but they caught onto the Gyarados. I have to go for an Undercharge here. The Undercharge onto the Gyarados. The Aura Sphere does not KO, and now we're going to go for 2 more pecks and the catch onto the Glalie. My opponent thought they had me with that catch, but a catch right back is going to put me right back in this game. The peck farm down allows us to make the Aura Sphere, and now back in comes the Bronzong, but this is a very sad Bronzong. Aura Sphere lands. GG's to this trainer. Glalie leading into a Dugong in the next game. I'm not particularly opposed to this lead either. We are just going to be able to very easily no-shield the first move. They usually go for an Icy Wind for absolutely no reason. Sometimes they opt to try to catch onto an Oranguru after going for either a Drill Run or an Icy Wind. I don't mind either. I am going to make sure that the Dugong is still on my screen because I have unfortunately had one too many instances of a Dugong catching and switching into an Oranguru, but I'm going to go for the Shadow Ball here, and they haven't lowered my defense yet, so I'm in a very nice spot to go for the Shadow Ball. This does quite a bit of damage onto the Dugong. I think I can still no-shield if they go for the Icy Wind, so I'm going to go for the no-shield, and now we're going to be able to make an Avalanche here. I'm over-farming as much as I can, needing to put this Dugong in a range where the Avalanche will be enough to KO. It is double resisted, and I am now -1, so I have to be very careful. I give the opponent as little farm as possible, but I'm actually going to end up switching out here. It is going to be a Claydol in the back, but being able to survive with our Glalie and keep it alive on 1 HP is going to be massively to our advantage. They are going to fire off a move here. I think I have to shield this, so I'm going to shield because I want to get as many Brutal Swings off onto this Claydol as possible. They decide to shield early, very commonplace for a Claydol, because Claydol wants to make sure that if it's throwing energy at you, that it is going to or if it's going to be taking energy from you, rather, it is going to be debuffed energy as opposed to non-debuffed energy. I get a second Brutal Swing off. I'm not able to make a third. The third definitely would have KO'd. We bring in the Togekiss, 1 peck, catch onto the Glalie, and now we don't have to take that debuff on our Togekiss, and now we can peck farm down this Claydol as well. Claydol going to go for a move here, but I am very comfortable with just shielding this up, and if it's something like an Oranguru in the back, we're going to be in a good spot. In the back, my opponent has a Skeledirge, but because we have Ancient Power, this game is going to be a win. Ancient Power lands, we get the Omni Boost, and now we are going to be able to comfortably survive anything the Skeledirge throws. The Torch Song lands, but we still would have been able to survive the Torch Song even without the Omni Boost. This game may have just been a little bit closer or have potentially been a Simul. So we are going to get the Ancient Power KO. Back in comes the Claydol. We get the peck farm down. GG's to this trainer. And just so everybody knows that I'm not a fraud, I'm going to show the 4-1 set claim that helped us get to Veteran at... Veteran? Expert helped us escape Veteran at 2755. We get a really bad backpack accessory, and we are on to the next match. All these games from here on out are going to be post-Expert, so let's see what the team can do now. Glalie leading into a Metang. Metang is going to be able to hit us for super effective damage with a potential Gyro Ball, but I'm not going to shield it. I'm going to bank my Shadow Ball for later. I have a bunch of energy, and I get the call correct. They thought that I was going to be forced to shield up that move, but I'm not shielding up a Psyshock bait. So we now bring in the Turtonator. The fact that they throw energy here is pretty indicative of the fact that they don't have a clean answer to the Turtonator. Turtonator going to be able to build up to Dragon Claw #1, and despite this not being Turtonator's best matchup, we are going to be able to put quite a bit of pressure onto this Dugong. We are going for yet another Dragon Claw, and this is going to get the Dugong relatively low here. The Dugong decides to no-shield that move as well, and I'm very comfortable with no-shielding this because I can very easily just bring in the Glalie, and now what is it the Dugong is going to do? I'm going to go for 1 rollout and a Shadow Ball here, looking to potentially get the CMP tie. I don't want the Dugong to escape with energy, so I decide to just go for the Shadow Ball for the KO, and now back in comes the Metang, but Metang is going to be greeted with yet another Shadow Ball. Shadow Ball is going to be shielded by the Metang, and now they have a Psyshock. Am I going to go for a Shadow Ball? Yes, I'm looking to commit to making a further Shadow Ball. I go for the Shadow Ball onto the Metang. Unfortunately, it's caught onto an Oranguru, but they didn't sneak a Confusion, so we're going to be okay. We're going to be able to switch out here. In comes the Turtonator, and saving that little bit of Turtonator. We're getting all the usage out of our Pokemon as physically possible. We had 3 Embers banked, and the 0-turn switch allows us to throw 1 Ember. The Confusion doesn't land, and we get a Brutal Swing to land onto that Oranguru. That is absolutely massive. The Oranguru has not thrown their energy yet. So now, Togekiss is going to be uncontested as it goes for this Aura Sphere. Aura Sphere lands onto the Oranguru. They decide to just let it go, put their hopes and dreams on the back of this Metang. I have a very important decision to make. Do I shield? Nah, I'm not going to shield the Psyshock bait. You do not get me to shield the Psyshock bait. And now, my opponent, probably realizing there's no longer a win con, Aura Sphere is going to be enough to KO. We are now doubled up. They realize it. They will just no shield and allow themselves to get farmed down. GG's. Looks like we're Glalie maxing in the next game as well. Glalie leading into Glalie. I don't mind staying in this matchup. Once again, I'm very comfortable no shielding a Shadow Ball, or if they tried to play it out like the last guy, I'm very comfortable with also shielding the second move because they decide to throw an Avalanche for no reason. They are going to fire off a move here. I full sent the Shadow Ball here. I can survive their Shadow Ball as well. My Glalie, as you can see, took that substantially worse, but we do win the CMP tie. So I'm just going to go for the Avalanche here. And worst case scenario, we can grab a shield. We actually grab the shield, and now in comes Turtonator. They do have an Avalanche here. I'm not going to risk an Avalanche landing onto this Turtonator, so I shield it up. They look to make another move, but unfortunately, they just give Turtonator more energy. In the back, they have Talonflame, but now I can go for 7 Embers and a Dragon Claw. Dragon Claw is going to be a clean 2-shot onto this Talonflame. The Talonflame does not yet have a move, so we are going to go for 2 more Embers and another Dragon Claw. Does the Talonflame decide to give up the last shield here? If they do not, they've just wasted their entire Talonflame, and that's exactly what they do. In the back, they have a Dusknoir, and this game is effectively over. There's nothing my opponent's going to be able to do here. I can go for 1 more Ember and another Brutal Swing. I outpace, and the Dusknoir, despite having so much loaded energy here, is not going to be able to survive the Brutal Swing and the combination of the pecks that are going to ensue. So they are going to go for a Shadow Punch. The Shadow Punch lands, but even though they're doubled up, we have a shield, and then I decided, you know what, I want to win this game, so I'm going to commit my shield onto the Dusknoir. We get the peck farm down. GG's to this trainer. Hopping into the next game, it's going to be Glalie leading into Togekiss. This is an awkward lead. Unfortunately, Glalie gets hit for super effective by Aura Sphere, which, despite the fact that there are a lot of Togekiss in this cup, and they can run either Ancient Power or Psyshock as their second move to great success, they're never going to forgo Aura Sphere. Aura Sphere is simply too good of a move. They are going to safe switch into a Shadow Drifblim. Shadow Drifblim, very spicy pick here in the LAIC Cup. We are going to look to make a second Ancient Power. They shield up my Ancient Power, unfortunately, and I'm going to bring in Glalie. But I'm not going to shield an Icy Wind, so we no shield, it's an Icy Wind, and now Glalie is very far ahead of my opponent. If they decide to bring back in the Togekiss, I can look to shield up the Glalie, as we have not conceded a shield yet. So we are in a pretty decent spot. They do decide to bring back in the Togekiss, and now Togekiss is soon to be met with an Avalanche. They go for the Aura Sphere. Aura Sphere is going to grab my first shield, and now I'm going to go for an Avalanche onto this Togekiss, making sure that it's still on the screen. I don't want them to catch onto like a Dugong or something, but that is not a Dugong. In the back, they have a Haxorus, and Haxorus gets 3 Dragon Tails off. Do those 3 Dragon Tails KO, or am I able to switch out? I can switch out into my Turtonator, and now, to be completely honest with you, Haxorus' attack stat is insane. I have to shield this up. It's a Breaking Swipe. Breaking Swipe gets the guaranteed debuff, but we are going to go for 4 Embers and a Dragon Claw. Dragon Claw onto the Haxorus. We're -1, and it still KOs. GG's to this trainer. And into the next game, it's going to be Glalie leading into an Oranguru. This is a pretty decent matchup for the Glalie. I don't mind being the Glalie at all here because I can go for 5 rollouts, but my opponent attempts to catch an Avalanche as soon as I get it, but I don't throw it then. I'm just going to go for a Shadow Ball onto the incoming Shadow Walrein. Walrein going to shield up, and now we're almost able to make another Shadow Ball. They waited so long to switch in the Walrein that we're able to outpace them well before they're able to make the Earthquake, and now I just decide, At this point, if you have Earthquake and you send it, whatever, I don't mind. Go for it. They KO my Glalie with the Earthquake, but I can just bring in my Turtonator, get 3 Embers of a head start, and I am so far ahead in this game. They decide to bring in their Gyarados as their last Pokemon, but Togekiss has an amazing matchup into both Gyarados and Oranguru, especially when shields are in play. We're going to go for a Brutal Swing, just looking to make as much damage onto this Gyarados as possible, because now Brutal Swings do add up to the point where Pex can start to threaten the Gyarados and force them to switch out. And that's exactly what they do. They switch out into the Oranguru, but we have an Aura Sphere. Aura Sphere onto the Oranguru is going to be able to 2-shot. We are not debuffed, so we are going to be able to get a 2-shot onto this Oranguru basically for free. I'm going to shield up whatever they throw here. They did go for the Trailblaze first, so a boosted Brutal Swing would hurt a little bit. I'm going to go for 3 Pex and an Aura Sphere. That next Confusion won't land unless they decide to shield this move up. What do they decide to do? They shield up, but now we can just bring in the Turtonator, go for the Brutal Swing, and there is now nothing they can do. If they decide to bring back in the Gyarados, which is the only play that they can make, we're going to be able to comfortably be able to shield up this move, or we can no-shield it as well. And I didn't think I was going to be able to make a move as well, but I make the Dragon Claw, and the Dragon Claw from here is just going to be a clean KO. So this is going to be a GG to our opponent. Getting into the next game, we've got Glalie leading into a Shadow Gligar. What is this? This is the final game of the video, and we've got some absolute spice on our screen. I am going to stay in with the Glalie for a little bit. They attempt to catch immediately onto the Dugong once again, but I'm not throwing my energy there. I'm instead going for the Shadow Ball. I'm very happy to just stay in with my Glalie here because the Dugong is going to be CMP tying us to our next move, and this is only their first move. I can also CMP tie them to the next if they decide to go for an Icy Wind, but I believe I can also live the Drill Run and the ensuing Ice Shards. They decide to go for the Drill Run. I am going to be able to survive it, but I pivot out just in case I need my Glalie a little bit for later, and now we're going to go for 6 Embers. We got the 0-turn switch, so 6 Embers and the Dragon Claw. Dragon Claw lands onto the Dugong, but Dugong did not get the chance to debuff us, so we were very easily able to get the KO there. Dragon Claw was just about perfect for the amount of health that that Dugong had left. Back in comes the Shadow Gligar. Gligar goes for a Night Slash bait. Night Slash bait going to be no-shielded by the Turtonator, and now I'm going for yet another Dragon Claw. It's a CMP tie. The Gligar does lose that CMP tie. A lot of these Pokemon are in a similar CMP range, except for Gyarados. Gyarados is absolutely the GOAT. The Gligar gets the Night Slash boost. Do they have Aerial Ace? I'm gonna no-shield it. I think I can live because, yeah, they go for another Night Slash, and they make another further Night Slash. I do have to give up a shield here. I have no choice but to give up a shield on this Night Slash, unfortunately. And in the back, it is revealed to be an Oranguru. But Oranguru struggles very severely into a Togekiss with this much loaded energy, and now we go for 3 more Pex, an Aura Sphere. This should be grabbing the shield from the Oranguru, but they are just so low. We have 3 Pokemon remaining, and there's just nothing the Oranguru can do other than hoping that they can get the farm down and throw energy into our remaining Pokemon. They are not able to get the farm down, so we just bring in our Turtonator. They decide to top left to save time. GG's to this trainer. If you made it to this point in the video, thank you so much for watching. Now, this team is not necessary for you to climb in the LAIC meta. There are some Pokemon that are going to be a little bit awkward for you, like Claydol is particularly awkward, as you guys may have been able to tell. A Togekiss lead is also pretty bad for the team, because your best answer is your own Togekiss, because your Turtonator is walled. There are things that do beat this team, but the LAIC meta is a lot less about the team that you run and a lot more about your gameplay. Manage your energy carefully, know what moves you can no-shield, bank energy, don't misalign your switch timer in a way that you cannot pivot out of a bad matchup, and try to run flexible, competent Pokemon, and you will see success in this particular meta. With all that being said, thanks once again so much for watching. I've been Shmeaty. I hope to see you all again next time, and have a good rest of your day. See ya.